It's the Benz Brunani womanist. Baby boys, baby girls, you need to hear this. If you sit down, receive this realness. Make sure your cup's ready for the tea, we are go sip it, yo. Hard times calling for your long shorts. You might learn something you never know. Kelechi fine, and she's one of a kind. Don't say you're mine, say you're mine.
Excellent. So good evening. If you're just arriving, welcome to Phoenix Court. If you've been rocking with us the whole day, thank you so much for staying. You will not be disappointed that you waited until this last session. So the last session is going to be a live podcast recording with Kelechi Okafor. If my voice shakes, it's because I am starstruck. Just encourage me. Just keep on smiling like you've been smiling the whole day. This session is going to be a podcast recording of Say Your Mind. And I believe we have been saying our mind for most of the day. So, a bit about Kelechi Okafor, otherwise known as the original baby girl. She is a commentator, a civil activist, and Kelechi is absolutely charming. But she will swear if you chat shit, if you act shitty, and if you treat people like them fool. She won't sing always we're happy people, but she will always sing truth to power. She's always going forwards, never backwards. When she's not standing up for your and my rights, she's an actress, an activist, and now an author. She's the author of The Edge of Here. And you are very lucky. I mean, we've really been giving today, all day long. But we're not done with giving. We will be gifting 5 of Kelechi's books. I don't know who's going to make the selection, but I will be looking out for all the friendly faces. It could be you. We also have some merchandise, some cute merchandise from Kelechi. So one, we have Kelechi up close and personal, but you could also take some of her merchandise home. We are truly excited and delighted that Kelechi, like the rest of our guests, said yes. So we're saying yes to Say Your Mind. And I'd now like to invite the original baby girl to come and join me on set. Are we going to dance? Thank you, DJ. We do make an effort out here, don't we? So, Kelechi, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I have said many things and I've had 2 introductions. I'll give them one final introduction since we're having the podcast together.
Okay.
And people may not know who I am. So I'm Jacqueline Onalo. My day job is I'm a human rights lawyer. But if you find me on social media, on Instagram, I am Namahia Malenya. Namahia means I belong to this clan in Western Kenya called the Bamaya. Malenya means bright, beautiful, sparkling. If you forget my name, just call me the special one. I will not object. And I think that's enough of an introduction. Today, this evening, it's mainly about Kelechi. Kelechi I've been stalking her online. I'm not going to pretend. I think you're my fellow stalkers as well. So, own up to it. So we'll try to have a conversation with Kelechi to find out more about Kelechi. And Kelechi, I might begin by saying we make loads of assumptions and your name sounds like it's Nigerian. It sounds like it's Igbo. But when I read your bio, hey, the Igbo, you're all in the house, eh?
So loud.
I see you. But you speak Yoruba.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about this.
So I feel like my name is a sort of red herring. So Kelechi Okafor. So that's my dad's Igbo and my mum's Yoruba.
Yes.
So having grown up with my mum, I took on a lot of that. And even my dad spoke Yoruba as well. So he didn't really speak Igbo around
Yes.
me. He spoke Yoruba. So I think that's what kind of penetrated. So
Yes.
that's what I understand
Excellent.
more. So when people see the name, they start with Kekwano and all that. I'm like, I don't know.
I've been told. Let me try my Yoruba. Oshe.
Yes.
Oshe.
Yes.
Excellent. So Kelechi, as I said, you're never backwards going forwards.
Amen.
And that means that you have really attracted some very unsavory people. Trolls and even more unsavory than that. You could just have your soft life, your baby girl life, look good, dress good, do some really
Amen.
cool things. Why have you chosen this path? Or why was this path chosen for you?
Who knows? I feel like I think it's a mutual thing. You have to commit to something. You have to choose something, even when that thing is choosing you. I think there are a lot of people who live life not choosing something that's clearly choosing them. So that can cause resentment. That can cause stagnancy. I think in order to move forward in life, as you say, there has to be a mutual. Life is a collaboration, and that's what I believe anyway. Like life is you having this constant dialogue between yourself and God, and then you co-create your own reality based on that. So I've tried to be quiet. I really have. I really have. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. I'm done. I'm not saying anything else. Like I'm done. And then I'll see something like, and before I know it, I have to say something. I think that with my whole makeup, the person I am is to speak about the things that I observe and to speak about it. Over time, I've learned to speak about it with more empathy, more compassion, as a way of making it as accessible to the greatest number of people as possible, but never trying to dilute the message so much that nobody knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. You know, when I read your posts or read your articles or see you on television, I'm glad that you're saying it as it is. Because sometimes we show up and we're diluting the message because we want to be palatable, digestible, but it serves no one. So thank you. Keep listening to that spirit that's pushing you to say all of these things. Now, your background is that you are a creative. And you've mentioned your Nigerian background. And I'm sorry, folks, I'm full of stereotypes this evening. If it does not apply to you, just sign or let it go. But, you know, being African, I'm an African parent. There are some careers that, you know, we think are really important. And all this dancing, talking, acting. I mean, how did you sell this to your folks?
I couldn't. I didn't. I guess some might call it stubborn. Some might call it hard-headed. I've just always known that I had to do what I wanted to do in life. So I remember all throughout school, people would say to my mum at the parents' evening, like, Kelechi's so talented. Like, she should definitely go into acting. And she'd be like, So it's my own daughter that should go into acting, but your own daughters will go and be doctor and go and be lawyer. But my own daughter should go. I'm like, calm down, they're not insulting you. But I guess to her, it felt like an insult. When it came to choosing colleges after high school, I knew that I was going to go to a performing arts school. I wanted to go to the Brit School. So I didn't apply to any other colleges. I didn't tell my mum that, but I was in charge of my UCAS, so I did what I wanted. But I think you have to have that sort of determination that this is what I'm going to do, so I'm going to do it. So because I kind of wrangled her and bamboozled her that time, when it came time to choosing university, she really wanted to look at what I was doing online. And she's like, if you dare to choose somewhere that you're just going to go and do drama, you're not going to that place. You have to choose somewhere where you can equally study law. I was like, what the hell? Like, what kind of place will let me do drama or theatre studies with law? So I was like, fine. I typed it into UCAS and it brought up 2 places. And the only feasible one to me was Liverpool Hope University that allowed me to do a combined degree in drama and theatre studies with law. And that was the only way I was going to get to go to uni. So to do 2 degrees at a time. But it worked out. It worked out that... especially when those contracts come through now, to be able to read and understand what's in front of me. So I focused on contract law and European law and criminal law. So because of that, I understand the things that I see now. So I'm kind of glad that did happen, like that she was so insistent, because if it was left to me, I'd have probably just done drama and theatre studies. And that's not to, I think that sometimes when we come out of the thing, we have a tendency to like romanticize it and make it like it was great. It wasn't great. It's depressing that if you so much, like you're so passionate about something, that the person that birthed you cannot share in your passion, it can really throw you because you feel like you haven't really got that steer, you haven't really got that guidance. But again, it might sound really cliche, but in that regard, I guess everything sort of does happen for a reason, because if I could go against my own mum, there is no person that's walking this earth's crust that's going to tell me like otherwise. If I say I'm going to do something, that's where you'll meet me.
Excellent. So my mom is in the audience. I'm not going to be trying to cross her tonight. But I will make an apology on behalf of the stereotypical African parent. When my daughter was going to university, she said something about media studies. And I was like, what? Media who? Studying what? But then I didn't make the right decision because I was being wise. I made the right decision because I was afraid that if I made her do something that she did not want, she'll come back and say, hey, what's up? So, I'm now being really transparent and open. She instead went and studied linguistics and comparative literature. And I absolutely loved comparative literature. When I read her essays, people can read 7 books at the same time and make comparisons. And it is beautiful to see you and other creatives living in your truth. So perhaps some signaling to those stereotypical parents out there. We're sorry. Yeah. But also there is a balance. I'm happy that you say that, you can be a creative, but you do need the other skills. You do need to understand the legal jargon so that no one does you over. But if they do you over, I am a lawyer. You know where to find me. And I can see other lawyers. Hey, no, you want a lawyer? Okay, we'll talk later. So parenting. So Kelechi, when I follow you online, when I see you on television, we know about your public life, and it surprised me. I had to really dig, and I then found out that you were actually blessed to be a mother, and you had your child during the height of the pandemic. And I've been thinking, when I was thinking about our conversation, and I had a chat with you, and I was thinking about parenting in the pandemic and parenting in the here and now. A few weeks ago, I went to Boards Award with Mabinti. Hey, Mabinti. Hey. So I'll be shouting out to everybody today. And we met a wonderful, wonderful lady called Ada Paris. And she mentioned this phrase that I've borrowed from her, this thing about being future ancestors, either as a mother, as a parent, as a guardian, or just being the future. Kelechi, tell us a bit about how you're navigating being a mother, being an activist, being under this public glare, but still having all these different roles.
I don't really try to think of labels. I think that motherhood, yeah, fine. that is a fact that I'm a mother, but everything else, I don't think it is a fact. So I don't tend to even refer to myself as an activist simply because people have a particular idea of what activists do and how they are. And I've had some kind of backlash in the past where I'm just there being a baby girl living my life. Well, I thought that as an activist, you would da 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 da. And again, I don't like people telling me what to do. So I'm like, if that's an issue, have your label back. I'm still going to continue doing the things that I do without that particular label. I don't see the point in it. You get the job done. That's the important thing, to get the job done. And that activist label as well, I find that when someone merely speaks about anything happening, just calls out anything that's happening, white mainstream media quickly run to call that person an activist. When Kwajo was in he's like this dilapidated sort of house, it was falling apart, and and his dad was ill and all of these things, he wasn't doing that out of activism, he was doing it out of desperation. And I think that there is a way that I guess society at large, predominantly white consciousness, sees anything or any time that a marginalized person speaks out about the injustices and like the kind of depraved circumstances that they're forced to endure, it's like, oh, here you go, stamp activists, where they just wanted to live their life. Like half the people I think who are called activists would prefer not to be, but they've kind of found themselves, and then they, in a way, start making you the spokesperson of everything that's happening to everybody else. And you're just like, you know what, maybe it sounds selfish, but I just wanted to speak about myself. Like, I wasn't trying to carry the whole estate on my back or my head, So I think about that sometimes, where something might happen even regarding maternal mortality rates. And I want to say something about it. It's ridiculous that Black women are 4 to 5 times more likely to die during childbirth in comparison to white women. But I know the moment I say that, hey, Kelechi, maternal mortality rate activist, it's like, no. I just wanted to point out that that is not okay. And so with motherhood, I feel that it's important to have some things that you keep to yourself. Like there just has to be some things that remain precious to you. The world can't have everything. And I think that due to the history of colonization and the transatlantic slave trade, as it pertains to Black women, society, the Western world is so used to extracting everything from Black women. And there are just some things I'm not going to give. And motherhood's just one of those things. As much as maybe my experience might benefit the next mum, I know that also I'm a quote unquote public figure. And the moment I speak about that thing, I then get drawn into speaking about it for everyone. And then what then does my son get to keep of me if everything that I've got has been given to everybody else and given to people that don't even appreciate it at the best of times? So no, I think that there has to be sort of that demarcation. However, during the pandemic, I did find it fascinating that when we speak about anger and Black people, but specifically anger and Black women, for the first time we saw everybody rise. They were angry and they used that anger constructively, to march. And you saw how quickly things changed societally. Like things were shut down, funding was found for this. People were posting like Black squares up, down, sideways. But what we saw is that when we use our anger constructively, things can shift. And then somehow people became desensitized again, defanged, and everyone quietened down. So when I spoke about motherhood specifically during the pandemic, I said, this is the kind of world that I want to be in, the one where we see something and collectively decide that it's wrong. We call it out, and so then that thing changes. So if we're talking about being future ancestors, I don't focus on the future because the future doesn't yet exist. I focus on the now. What can I shift in the now that will then have this sort of like ripple effect into the future? If I become too preoccupied with the future and how I want to be perceived, I don't think I'll really truly live in the now. I'll stop myself from doing certain things. So I just want to make the best decisions now and hope that one day, 25, 35 years from now, one child looks at it and they go, well, yeah, that person there, absolutely, like they absolutely rocked it.
Yeah, thank you. And this really resonates with something I overheard in a conversation in the Norwegian countryside this weekend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was
Norwegian countryside.
It was deep, but it was beautiful. And so there's a conversation about going out, a night out, etc. And someone says, well, not today, maybe tomorrow. And then this lady who has baptized herself, Sexy Stella, my family actually saw her on my Zoom family meeting. She asked this question that was very simple but very profound. And she said to the person, who promised you tomorrow? And I thought that was really powerful. And I have remembered that based on what you're saying. So if we take anything from that, is that we have today and we have now. Perhaps it's best to focus on the now, do the best that we can today, and the future will judge us on what we do today, instead of being too preoccupied with what's to come tomorrow.
I think that that's what lends itself, if we're talking about activism, that's what lends itself to true activism, where you're not waiting for situations to be better to say something, to speak. Someone...
Say it. My
friend and I were out the other day And someone came up to me and they were like, well done for all of the things that you do, all the things that you sacrifice, doing what you do. Oh, I can't do it, girl. You know, I need to get my bills. I need to have my bills paid. I need to make my money. I need to get my coins, but it's good that you're doing it. But one day when I've made all my coins and I'm living comfortably somewhere on a beautiful island somewhere, that's when I'm going to start doing a Kelechi. That's what I call it. That's when I'm going to start speaking out about things. And I just kept this straight face as they said it. And my friend was like, what the hell? How dare they say so? So you should do all the hard work now. And I got it. But because I've heard that in so many different forms over the years, people basically praising me for, I understand that what you do means that you essentially lose out on certain things, but you keep doing it while I stay silent. And then one miraculous day, as Mariah Carey said, one sweet day, you will suddenly learn to do what I've been doing for years, where you have nothing to risk for doing that thing. So then what's the value in doing it then? And who also told you that you're going to get to that end point? I'm not cursing your life, but who said that you're going to get to that? Who said you're going to get to that point? So it speaks to what you said about the now. If you're not going to do it in the now, then why are you talking?
Yeah, absolutely. So we invite you to a table if you're using your platform, and that platform can be anything. It does not have to be a podcast. It can be exactly that. It can be exactly that. So really do use your platform. And, oh gosh, you missed some fun, but you'll watch the video. We had Dr. Sholomo Shobamimu here, and she and I have done some work together, and we came up with this phrase. I think it really does sum up what you're saying. No more silent witness. So can we repeat that? No more silent witness. Because no one signed a contract with Kelechi to come and speak on our behalf. She's not everywhere. So in those silent, unseen spaces that no one can really see, we can use our voice. If you notice something, say something, do something, check on the other person. And we really do hope that we would do the same. So we are at a VC farm. Our focus here is many things, but it's innovation, entrepreneurship, and we hope that we are living our values. So I thought that we might spend a little time talking about wealth, power, and this thing about racial equity. What are your views with regards to this?
It's interesting because I think, especially as it pertains to like technology and also investing, there is the whole thing about like, I want to call it almost like fascist philanthropy. There are some people that come to mind that I think do that very well, as in very badly, where because you've put money into something, you get to, or into a country or whatever, you get to control. It's a kind of weird kind of neo-colonization where you then get to control what that country or what those people do. And then you can start spouting inaccuracies like overpopulation and basically using new ways to regurgitate the same old myth about the hypersexualized like black demon. So I think that over time, I've kind of been fearful of people investing in what I'm doing because I've always seen money and people investing as a way of control. That's what we've been taught, that if you have money, you then have control. And I had to start rethinking things the more that organizations popped up that seemed like they wanted to be a part of the change and they wanted to truly be equitable. And it's still a learning process. It's about trust. And I would think it really ridiculous if somebody wasn't questioning where they're receiving their investments from and they were just going ahead with it. And then it's, at the end of the day that they regret it. We see it happen with even hair care brands where black women or black people start supporting a brand and then somebody comes along because they see that it's popular and they buy it. And then they change the formula. And then suddenly it's not as beneficial anymore. And in some cases, you've now added carcinogenic things to the formula, which is what we were trying to avoid in the first place. So really seeing how corporations being interested in what black entrepreneurs are doing can actually be harmful to the black kind of customers that these people were trying to serve in the first place. So it's a whole process of learning to trust those who mean well, but you can't be, I think to be able to trust, you can't be scared to ask questions. I feel like oftentimes as marginalized communities, specifically as Black people, gratitude can be weaponized against us where, because somebody's giving you this, you can't ask questions. You just go ahead because nobody was going to give it to you anyway. So you go ahead with it. And I believe in asking questions. And if they go, then they weren't the right people for your thing anyway, because nobody should be scared of being asked questions. Like, well, how do you do this? What are your views about this, that, and the other? You should be able to ask these questions because otherwise, again, your whole brand kind of becomes diluted and your ethos, your mission then becomes diluted, and that's not necessarily what we want. And in a space that we find ourselves in now, where technology is growing and at a directly correlating rate to anti-Blackness, there are conversations we need to have. Like, we look at the tech bros. Tech bros make mistakes all the time. They lose people money all the time. But if they turn around tomorrow and said, hey, cool, I've got this new cool idea, millions will start falling. People literally fall over themselves to invest in the next thing. But as a Black entrepreneur, like, if you know that you only have so many chances to get that thing right. And so the pressure sometimes I feel like isn't fair. And I just want for there to be a space, and I see more spaces emerging where, venture capital or investors turn around and they say, we're going to give you this money, just go and do what you do best. Not all of this like, okay, now show me how you used it and show me, and if you haven't used it, or give it back. It's very weird behavior. It feels weirdly toxically paternalistic. And I just like that there are spaces where people are moving towards doing better and trusting the people that they're investing in, especially when they're Black, to do what they need to do. We were in a roundtable before and we were discussing small businesses, and all of this, people were throwing big words. Me, I wasn't there for the big words. It was very, very simple to me. There are small businesses that aren't doing glamorous things that still need support. And if you create an application process for funding that they have to jump through endless hoops, that actually distracts them from the thing that they're meant to be doing, and they're trying to prove things that essentially they can't prove because they didn't go to the schools that you wanted them to go to. They don't have the network that you wanted them to have. That means they're not going to get the funding. How is that fair? We're basically still propagating the same hierarchical structure that's oppressive and doesn't serve anybody anyway. So as long as people are looking at, are we making this truly, like from the entry point, are we making this fair for people to have a chance at getting what they need from us? Because if it's not fair at the beginning, I promise you it's just not going to be fair at the end.
Thank you, Kelechi, because I think that... So when I was thinking about this conversation, I just imagined to go one way. I thought you would say, with wealth comes power and then equity. But you've given us a different angle. And I like this other angle, whereby we should invest in ourselves. We should create our own power and not rely on the power of others. And others, if we trust them and they're our allies, they should share the power and not use it to control us. There's a message, I think, for everybody in terms of how the power dynamics work. And I think it is important to create that power. Otherwise, you could always be at the mercy of the other. Yeah. And that means that people who are in spaces like this should behave in an equitable way, in a partnership kind of way, and that's really important.
No, definitely. And I think that sometimes, and maybe this is where I differ from everybody else in terms of being talking heads or commentators, is that palatability leaves me, because I'm like, sometimes you have to take power, like you take it, because waiting for people to share power means that you are relying on altruism. You're relying on a moral, this fly child. You're relying on their moral compass being correctly. And if it's not, then you're really wasting your time. But you have to be able to take it. And I think that my platform wouldn't be what my platform is if I was waiting for somebody to give me power, to share power with me. You created a social media app. I jumped on the social media app and I used it to say what I needed to say. And an example of that is Missy. Everyone's seen the whole conversation. I think that's really interesting. And I wrote a piece about it. I think that either comes out today or tomorrow. I find that so fascinating. And I think it's important to use that as an example of power, because he is fulfilling the negative stereotypes that's believed of Black people. And because he's fulfilling those stereotypes, what do? They give him platform after platform after platform to go on to push that narrative. So racist viewers can watch that and be like, that's why I don't like him. That's why I don't like him. So you're riling them up. You're working them up, right? But then somebody like me, that I just want to say to you, what you're telling the British public is actually incorrect, or it's not a full story. So how about we tell them the entire story? You're not really booking me to come on all of these platforms, because you know that if you give me access to that audience, I'm going to wrangle, I'm going to shake their brain, I'm going to shake their amygdala. So you said, so I don't come on because you don't want them to change the way that they view Black people, but you'll give him Piers Morgan, BBC Newsnight, like everybody's having him on to the extent where somebody's shouting at him, calling him an idiot, threatening to drag him out by his hair. I feel like sometimes we take too much of a back seat because we don't like that representation of ourselves, that we don't understand that if we allow for them to speak to him that way, it's going to come back on everybody else eventually. And so it's important for us to take the power, as in speak out on our platforms and to use our platforms the way that we use them, to have our own businesses, to do the things that we do while not overtly waiting for power externally to be shared with us, because there are so many hoops to jump through that if you aren't fulfilling a negative stereotype of what is believed about your people, you're unlikely to get a seat at the table. And the table's wonky anyway and it's dusty.
So this feels like if they don't. No. I'm actually going to agree with you. You know, usually say they don't give you to the table, bring your own seat. But actually we're saying, let's build our own tables. Yeah, so create power, take power. Power is never handed. I've never seen power handed over. And if it is, you should be very, very suspicious of it. Yeah, so let's see how we can change the power dynamics. So Kelechi, it's supposed to be a conversation, but I'm really enjoying asking you all the questions. So I'm going to make this statement. Can we please be more than one thing? So I go to various platforms, and the whole day I've given this wonderful folk a fashion show, wearing scarves, wearing turbans, wearing everything. And that means that people then have a view about me. They want to view me through one lens. Edith knows I've cried to her, well, not really crying. Maybe I did cry, I don't know. She'll remind me. When people say, Jackie, what you actually do, what you really do, you just seem to dress up and pop up at these events. What do you do? And maybe the instinct is to then say all the things to qualify myself. But do I need to qualify myself? Because I'm really tired having to navigate being policed as a Black woman and having boundaries. There's politics about my hair, politics about my accents, about my tonality, about my style. I'm sexualized, I'm fetishized. There's so much that all this policing. What is your experience and what would you say to this being our lived day? And I say this both, not just for women, but for men and women, for Black people, that we're, being policed, that stereotype. This is who you are, this is the narrative, and stay in that box.
Yeah. It's something I'm exploring, but I definitely think that, don't you find it hilarious and ridiculous that the people who have been able to define who we are and the construct that's been able to define who we are and what we are doesn't have much imagination? Like, there's nothing under white supremacist heteropatriarchy or patriarchal ideology that is unique. It's taken the most depraved aspects of different parts of history, amalgamated it and gone, bleh, and then we've gone along with it. Like, have you really looked around? A lot of the things that we navigate in our day-to-day, it's just unimaginative. Like, things could just be so different. And before I used to get annoyed when people would be like, oh, but I thought you were an actor. So now what, you're writing and what, you've got a pole dance studio? Like, God, I can't keep up, and so don't. How's that my problem? How's that my problem. I set pace. That's it. Like, it's what it is. And you know, like, it's language is so important because how language is used can really start to play with our subconscious. It can play with our psyche. Somebody making it sound like an inconvenience that they can't contain me, I start apologizing for not being contained. No, like, I'm sorry. Leave me, I beg. Like, it's not that serious. So it does get tough in a society, a capitalist society that wants to kind of have one word quickly, like describe yourself quickly. And that's why I went with baby girl. I'm just a baby girl. Like, that's how I came to it, because I'm not, you know, in the sense of how we understand the word to be, I'm not an activist. I'm not a particularly this. I'm not a particularly that. I'm just a baby girl. And wherever you find me, wherever spirit moves me, wherever God moves me, that's where I'm going to be. And I'm going to make the most of that thing. And maybe next year I'll be skipping, you know, like, it is what it is. I think also growing up in a West African household, it's like you must chuck your head in that profession for the entirety of your life. Like, this whole idea of, you get a job for life. I might have a job for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and I'll move on to the next thing. I think that what that allows is to understand that, first of all, time is a construct and that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So therefore, my spirit can move, it's fluid, it can do whatever it wants to do. I can't say for the fact that, because I'm in a physical body, I'm going to limit myself further. Like, that comes when you're in a coffin. Like, outside of that, just do what you need to do and feel sorry for the people who kind of go, so what do I call you? I don't know, like, why are you trying to call me anything? I gave you my name, stick with that. Like, that's enough, right? Why are you trying to do extra? Like, nobody asked you, nobody begged you. It is tough. I think for Black women, it is tough because you feel like to be taken seriously, you need to be able to say, I've spent 15 years at this profession. Okay, I spent 36 years being Kelechi. I'm qualified at being me. I can't quantify or qualify anything else outside of that. So now a lot of the newspaper platforms or the media platforms that ask me for a bio, I let them choose whatever you want to choose today. Maybe it's actor or writer. Tomorrow it'll be podcast host, whatever. But if you leave it to me, it's just going to be baby girl. So you do just, do what you do what you want to do with that. It's radical, but I think it's so important because when you, outside of Black womanhood, when you move away from trying to categorize somebody, you actually get to learn who they are. Life is so short, but long at the same time. Why do you want to waste it because what we're trying to do, as we've been taught naturally, due to like fight or flight mechanisms that we say happen naturally, we need to figure out as quickly as possible, who is this person in front of me? What are they like? And you want to draw on preconceived notions or prejudices that you already have ingrained, programmed in you, so you can run that when you're speaking with this person. Oh, so you're a doctor, so you must, But what if it was just like, you're Alison? What does Alison like to do? Suddenly you have to connect. Rather than judge, you're going to have to connect. So I think like not allowing people to have that thing that they want is powerful.
Excellent. I really like the sound of that. And if I could sing, when you said leave me alone, who can sing that Michael Jackson hook? Leave me alone.
I knew that you first.
So people who can't sing are even trying to sing because just leave me alone. I can't sing, but singing makes me happy. And I really like what you're saying. You really need to, at my age, I'm now paying attention when words are either friend or finned. If it's friendly, let's roll. If it's finned, you just draw your line and you go. You don't have to be likable to everybody. So, you've mentioned this baby girl life. Can't really say that I'm going for the baby girl because I've, age is giving me this elder status. People now just respect me for my age. I don't have to prove anything and I love it. But I am in my soft life era. And I have to fund this soft life era. So call me to do stuff for you lot. But what I find in this soft life era that I've invented for myself, people are going to be like, you're on vacation again. You're wearing that one. You're going here. And then I start explaining, I'm working remote. I don't have to explain. Now I just say, when you start, I just say, God has blessed me. May He also bless you too.
I don't even know.
Just leave me alone. So don't fall into that trap of being boxed in, But I'm not a box. You can tell we're not boxes.
No.
So just call who you are and live in your truth. I think we've spent the whole day, speaker after speaker, creative after creative, saying, be authentic. Really, really important. So I'm going to move on a little bit and ask, how do we have joy and peace of mind and rest? God, I'm going to sleep well tonight whilst dealing with this daily trauma. People might not see it as trauma, but it is daily trauma. It's either happening to you or happening to someone next to you or happening to someone who is like you.
Yeah.
So how can we have joy, peace of mind, and rest while still living in this reality?
That's an interesting one. I think it's one that I'm still figuring out, as we all are. Like, we don't all have the answers. We're still figuring it out. But one thing I understand is that joy, peace, they're not destinations. Like, it's all a journey. Some days feel more joyful and peaceful than others, right? But I invite us all to consider that joy and peace is the starting point regardless. Inherently, that is actually where we begin. Everything else that happens that's compounded on it, that is the unnatural phenomena. The racism, the this, the that is what was added on. So at the core of everything will always be love, will always be peace, will always be joy. So it's always there in every single moment. And it sounds woo-woo to say, because obviously we know that there are war-torn countries right now, and someone's going to be like, what, you're trying to tell me that they're right there when a bomb's going off, that they should find joy? And I can't speak to their experiences, and I wouldn't want to undermine their experiences, like being like, oh, just find joy. But I do feel like if you were to speak to somebody who has experienced that or is experiencing that, they might tell you something random in their day that still is one thing that they hold on to that keeps them going to the next thing. And it's the only tool that we have. All this talking, I'm doing like a talker. That's not the actual tool. The anger isn't the actual tool. All of these things aren't the actual tools that lead us towards liberation. They are useful, I guess, but they're not the tools. The things that get us the liberation that we seek and we so desperately desire is the joy and the peace. If we don't practice it now, it's like what I was saying about that one, the wayward one that was like, oh, when I get to an island, that's when I'm going to start being more Kelechi. So there's a 120 kg bar loaded up at the gym. You who has never lifted a weight before in your life, you're going to come now to that 120 kg bar and you're saying, I'm going to lift that today. Your back will break there, right? So if you don't start with the 1 kg to the 2 kg to the 5 kg to the 6, you're not really going to work up to that 120. You're just not. So I feel like it is the same when we talk about practicing peace and practicing joy. It's a practice. Love, it's a daily practice. You don't have any days off, right? And so you can't say that, oh, it's when the world changes, that's when I'm going to know peace and joy and love, because you haven't been practicing the thing. So you're unlikely. First of all, we're unlikely to get there. And then 2, if we were to get there by some random miracle, you won't even know how to act. Then we're going to have to excommunicate you because you don't know what to like. In short, the joy, the peace, the love that we're talking about finding, even if it's just a glimmer, even because some days are so hard, Lord, even if it's just a glimmer of something, whether it's a show or whether it's a book or whether it's just the way that the sunshine comes through your window or you just hear a bird or maybe it's the rustle of the wind through the leaves, just something that connects you back to source, that shows you that there is something divine even about this very wogga wogga experience. I think that that's what kind of moves us forward. That those are the only tools that we have. Anything outside of that is transient.
I like that thing about joy and peace and rest being a journey and not a destination. Because if every day you're trying to get to the journey and you don't get there, then really eliminating the joy and the peace. And I'm a bit long in the tooth, but I began to practice joy and peace I'm working on the rest, but at least the joy and peace and finding joy in simple things. I remember 2 or 3 weeks ago, the weather was really good. My feet were killing me. I took off my shoes when I got to my local park and I just walked barefoot. I can't remember the last time I walked barefoot. I was probably a child. And I just connected with nature.
Yeah.
It was joyous. It was probably like 7 or 10 minutes. My family are tired. I sent so many photographs. If I just spot a bird that looks good or a plant, or if I plate my food properly, even if I don't respond, please start responding, kind people. It's joyous. You know, it's something, it's lifting my spirit and hopefully lifting other people. So I do hope, like Kelechi, the baby girl life, and myself with the soft life, that you will practice joy and peace of mind every day, regardless of what's going on. Now, Kelechi, hey, you're doing a lot of things. I don't know how you're not tired, but you know, you must be mindful. But you have managed, with all the things that you're doing, to write this book.
Yeah.
Yes. The book actually has played on the theme, though I didn't really say it. Who promised you tomorrow? So we're on the edge of here. That's the title of Kelechi's book.
Yeah.
And just to let you know that I had pre-ordered this book even before Kelechi agreed to come here. So I'm not just a fan for today. Order the book. I know
Thank
you
you.
will anyway.
Thank you.
I've read some of it and we've spoken about some of it. Honestly, I live a charmed life. I've had a preview, people. So all this talking sometimes can lead you to wonderful places. And I'm going to ask you about the book, but when I was reading part of it, it was a wonderful intersection of tech, allyship, equity. Why have you written this book? Why the edge of here? Why now? It's an easy question, yeah, right?
It's what you said earlier about things choosing you,
Yes.
right? So I initially in 2019, I wanted to write a non-fiction. So just like very like, this is me, Kelechi, some commentator, and it's what I think. I wanted to write a non-fiction book about anger and how anger can be a liberating force for Black women specifically. When we look at the stats, we have an exponential, disproportionate rate for fibroids. And so I started to think about, where do we store anger? Where does anger go? And again, not to merely just go off on the woo-woo and be like, oh, it's all spiritual. But there is a link. There is a clear correlation that something is happening and our cells are reacting to this. And if we think historically about how the wombs of Black people have been used in order to propagate the slave trade and thus capitalism as we know it, that's residual trauma, as I see it, that can be passed on intergenerationally. So I feel that if we give ourselves permission to feel our anger and we let that anger move through us, we use it for something constructive, we start the journey of liberation and we need it. Some of the most challenging times is when I interact with certain types of Black women and I can see that they're getting hot around me. Like they just can't really take how I present. And it's because, we're meant to be respectful Black women and we don't do this and we don't speak like that and we definitely don't say something, mum. And so, so they get really riled up by me, like really riled up. And I think because what's upsetting you is that I'm expressing an anger that you are not allowing yourself to feel. And so that's why you're moving wild. And if we could just all let that anger flow, I think that it just creates space for so much more beauty in our life. Of course, this went to all the publishers. I was just like, this is what I want to write. So, what we were thinking, how do we make this more universal? Universal. What? Like, I'm talking, because like white women also have experience. there are books, like there are books. And we've had to grow up as Black girls into Black women reading of other people's experiences and somehow trying to find our humanity in those stories, even when it was clearly leaving us out. So why can't I write something specifically about this thing that Black women experience? Because they're the ones called aggressive, angry, this, that, continuously. Why don't I get to write about that? Well, we just don't think it's going to do well. Cool. Then 2020 happened. And then they saw everything happening. And then suddenly they're emailing my agent. So is Kelechi still writing that book? And that's when I was like, and out of stubbornness, I was like, I'm not writing the book now. If you want to be mad, we can be mad together. I'm not writing a book. But on a serious note, what I realized through 2020 is that there was a lot more for me, myself, to learn about how anger manifests in our world. And I want to, if I write this book or when I write this book, inshallah, like when I write this book, I want to do justice to the experiences of Black women. So let me not rush, let me fall back. So I thought, okay, I was a bit like annoyed about it, but I left it, put it to the side. I'll write it at some point. And then I was asked by Sarita Domingo, who's an incredible author. She writes beautiful romance novels. She DM'd me and she was like, oh, would you consider writing a love story for this anthology that I'm putting together? It'll be love stories by women of color. And it just threw me because I was just like, love? Girl, have you seen my timeline? But I love that because instantly, somehow, I already knew the story that I wanted to write. So I got to this fly. It's really not one
My
of the
team, where are you? Please fly, do not disgrace us.
Thank you.
Listen, I have no control over this.
No, don't worry about the fly. The fly is just channeling its anger. I got to write in that story. The story I ended up writing was called The Watchers. And so in The Watchers, Chinonso and Ndidi, they meet in every lifetime, but they never remember that they've met. And they fall in love in every lifetime, but they never remember that, they've met this. And so the Watchers are sort of like these celestial guardians that watch over them to make sure that they meet at the time that they're meant to meet, all of that stuff. And so even before, the moment she asked me that, I was just like, in the sliver of space between this world and the next, we, the Watchers, reside. I was just like, rah, mad. What does that mean? Typed it, and that became the first line of the novel, that's the Watchers reside in this space. And so we meet Chinonso and Ndidi. Ndidi's going to go and meet him at the Slavery Museum for their first date. And she's in Liverpool. And so it works out that I went to Liverpool for uni. And so she's walking to the Slavery Museum and she's like, who the hell chooses a slavery museum for the first date? And so she's doing all this stuff and she's hobbling and she goes to meet him. He says, oh, I kind of had a weird dream that we stood in front of this painting and that's how we got chatting. And the painting is of Queen Nzinga. And so they start having this conversation and then we jump to a life where they've met before in Bonny, on the coast. Where in West Africa, where the people were being enslaved and taken from there across. And so we meet Ndidi. She's the daughter of a man who unfortunately is selling people to the merchants. And she's essentially betrothed to Pedro, who's a Portuguese slave merchant, but she falls in love with Chinonso, who's a sculptor, and he carves out of like wood. And so we see them fall in love in that lifetime and what happens to them and how they kind of get torn apart in that lifetime. And so we kind of hope that in this lifetime where they're meeting at the Slavery Museum, where they don't remember each other and they're just, having banter as they go from the Slavery Museum to the restaurant, we're sort of rooting for them to kind of like make this lifetime work. And writing it, I don't feel like I necessarily wrote it more so that I channeled it. But in writing it, what I saw was that it included all of the things that I care about desperately and greatly. Talking about the history of the transatlantic slave trade, talking about colonization, talking about how love is the most transformative force that allows us the liberation that we are seeking in this lifetime, but put it in a way that isn't a thread of commentary where I'm effing and blinding. I'm giving it to you in terms of protagonists that you're deeply invested in because you want them to do well. And then I started to think about it that maybe I want to write more short stories, and seeing how popular that particular story was in the anthology, when Sarita got a new position and she became editorial director at Trapeze, a publisher, she messaged me and she was just like, do you want to write a book? I was like, sure. And what do you want to write? I said, I guess I want to write the rest, or write a collection of short stories to complement The Watchers. And so if you think about it, on this journey that I've been on, that we've been talking about, right? I had a full proposal. in 2019. And I went to these publishers. My agent went to these publishers and said, look, and they couldn't see it. By the time we got to 2020 or 2021, and Sarita came round to me, I didn't submit anything. I did not, so for my book deal, I didn't submit anything. Other than the Watchers that they read, I didn't submit anything. And so that showed me that, like, God's favor over my life is mad. Like, when it's the right time, the things will happen as they're meant to happen. So got the book deal. And it's funny because my agent had told me prior to that Kelechi, nobody gets a book deal, or preemptive. Preemptive means that they haven't seen anything, but they give you the book deal anyway. She told me nobody gets a preemptive book deal, or rarely do people get a preemptive book deal for fiction. For fiction, you have to finish the entire manuscript and then give it over, because they need to know that you can tell a story. You know, non-fiction, somebody can help you figure it out. Fiction, they need to know that you can tell that story. So they prefer for you to hand in a manuscript. All they had was that one story. And they were like, yeah, go through. And that gave me the space to then write the rest of Edge of Here, where I basically explore all of the things that we think are on the margins, that they're slowly moving into the center. One of the stories is called Ally Chip. And it's a world that looks like this one. So it's speculative fiction. The world looks like this one. It's just different technologically. So there's a chip that goes into your brain and goes into another person's brain. So 2 chips. And it allows for that person to feel the experiences of what it feels like to experience racism, basically. So white people sign up, like, put the chip in. I want to be an ally chip. Want to support. So the chip goes in, and then they start experiencing what those feelings are. And then suddenly they start having ally chip fatigue, and they're like, take it out. And they start doing various things that show that you can't address racism without addressing white supremacist heteropatriarchy, essentially. So all of this stuff starts to kind of play out. So I use different types of technology to explore conversations that I think we still need to have as it pertains to allyship. How are you an ally if your support is contingent upon me behaving the way you want me to behave in any situation? And I'm not allowed to feel all of my feelings because it's going to upset you, and therefore you're going to retract your support. So having that theme and then sort of amplifying it and then making it into something else and in the form of a chip, that means we can have conversations that we already think are difficult to have, but we can have them on the premise that, oh, we're just talking about fiction. It's okay. Nobody's feelings need to be hurt. But yeah, feelings will be hurt.
Thank you. So you had the preview here, yeah? Just credit us, huh? I love that story. I love the story of Ndidi and Chinoso and how it brought you to the edge of here. So I do agree with you. What is yours is yours. You put in the work with Ndidi and Chinoso, and it brought you to this.
Yeah.
So I hope that when everything is said and done, that you also trust that whatever you're doing, just keep on doing it. Mm. What is yours is yours. What is not yours, let it go. Mm. Yeah, it's not easy in the moment, but let it go. Yeah. There's always something. I could tell you 100 stories, but maybe I'll write the book. And you yes. all have your stories whereby you thought that you were losing something when they were saying no, no, no. But actually, in the future, it was opening up to something a lot better.
Yes.
So this whole thing, allyship and allyship, when I thought about it, and I'm going to have to paraphrase because we're coming to a really fun bit, and I'm surprised that no one is giving me any side eye in this room, but it's okay. I am getting to it. This allyship and allyship. I was thinking about it with this chip, feeling the experience and having empathy. And I've thought about the journey of 3 years and people just simply having blackout on their social media or having different initiatives and just really feeling it. But can we go beyond empathy to real tangible action? Because the feeling it is fine. It was great when you have the chip and then you're like, oh God, this is terrible. Like, I understand you, I feel it. But can we have the action, the next step from there? And I wonder whether that is where we are. Is that where we are, where people feel like, our allies feel like, I know the experience, I've learned the experience, but it's not enough. It's the taking of the action. And so I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop there because, Kelechi, I'm going back to all of these stereotypes. Tarot card reading.
Oh.
I don't know where to start, but you could be the Mystic Meg without the fraud of 2023. And I will tell a short story. I am a volunteer at a local art gallery. I've had a wonderful day. They had sound therapy. I was like, how can banging this big drums be? It was actually very therapeutic. I was falling asleep. So then I saw some tarot cards. There was a queue, man, like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Folk are still like lining up. So I joined the queue. And I was like saying, I don't really believe in all this tarot card reading. And the lady behind me got really cross. She's like, so why are you wasting time? Get out. Let the people who believe in it. And I was like, no. I believe in evidence. Let me go and try it. So then I can say, yes, I believe. No, I don't believe. Yeah. So I went there and she was tired and she had some coffee and then she smoked and she came back. And she was doing the cards. And I was like, But listen, it was like a coaching session. She was actually like a trainee solicitor. She gave me some really good tips. The only thing I did not like about, because she said, there's no love right now. I was like, what? Throw those cards some more until we get to the point. So, but in saying that, then I had this conversation. I knew you were coming and you do this tarot card reading. And someone says, no, Jackie, just be careful, all this occult business. So Kelechi, so spirituality, religion, tarot card. Tell us something.
I'll keep it quick because I'm really looking at that sign.
I've been ignoring this sign. Sorry. We're getting to the tarot card reading. Yes. I was looking for Leslie, but you're not Leslie. Okay, I'm paying attention.
It's all about power. As far as I'm concerned, it's all about power. It's all about reclaiming power. I don't necessarily tell people to believe in anything. Do what you want. I believe in God. And I believe that this world is made in such a way that the messages find us wherever the messages need to find us. And it's about being spiritually open to receive those messages. There are bad mind people everywhere. So whenever people go, oh, but your pastor. So to me, it's just like, I'm not trying to focus on humans. I'm trying to focus on spirit. I'm trying to focus on that experience. And it's hard to read something where you're vilified a lot of the way through, or you're in an environment where you're vilified a lot of the way through, and you're actually taught that in the order to be this good woman, to be this good person, you essentially have to give up so much of your personal power. And the way to show support is to be cunning and support the man and do this. It just all sounds very weirdly patriarchal, and it doesn't sit right with me. So I've had to find a way to reconcile all of the things that I've grown up with knowing and the things that speak to me and give me comfort within organized religion, and mixing it with exploration for myself. At the end of the day, with tarot, there are 78 cards. And they all have different images, and they speak to essentially the human condition. I created a deck of affirmation cards, and I created this deck. I've made other decks, but this particular one I made because I think that there are people like me that think affirmations are weird. Like, it just sounds so kind of like, oh, girl, don't be corny. So I made these, and they're called Affirmations for a Dickhead in Recovery. Because I sort of see myself, I definitely see myself, and I've said it for years on the podcast, as a dickhead in recovery. I didn't come out of my mother just being great and wise and loving. I've had some very problematic views, and I've had to work through those problematic views. So as far as I'm concerned, if I can do that, everybody is capable of doing that. So there is a part of us where we're all dickheads in one capacity, but it's committing ourselves to recovering from being a dickhead and doing the best that we can to not spread dickeddom. But when we were talking earlier, the card that came out says, from this deck, to love me and to be loved by me is an honor in this lifetime. And I think that that's beautiful because we need to value our love. Our love is an energetic force that we put into the things that we create. And I'm not talking just in the sense of being a creative. Being a lawyer is creative. Fam, you've got to come up with them arguments. Like there's so many ways that we are creative in our lives. We can't just relegate it to only people who draw and paint. Like, it's not. Like, you're creative just by existing. And so, because if the creator created you, and you are part of creation, and you also have the power to co-create your reality, you are a creative. And so the only thing that makes the things you create worth having and lasting is love. Like, if it's not infused with love, it's just not worth it. It won't last. So to love me and to be loved by me is an honor in this lifetime. It's something that we all need to claim for ourselves. The 78 cards, like I said, they speak to different conditions, and depending on which combination that you get, it'll bring up a kind of line of conversation.
Instead of talking about it, can we have a tarot card reading?
Well, it's going to be super quick.
Yes.
Can someone give me something that you'd want the tarot to look into? What should we talk about?
Fortune.
Ah? Fortune.
Fortune, investment.
In what sense?
Investment, yeah.
That's all you lot know, money. Jesus Christ.
Okay. Other ideas.
no, but
Fortune, money, love,
Huh?
relationships.
Why are you scared of grief? See, look at that. When it was money, you were like, yeah. Money.
Listen, you all have an expiry date. Yeah, all right.
But grief, I love that because grief actually ties into fortune. It ties into love, and it does tie into money. Inheritance. That's so morbid. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Grief. What can we learn about grief? Oh,
yes.
Nice. Okay. Okay, cool. So someone was going to say, how do you know what the cards mean? Right. So each card, so I'm going to show you this one. This is the 10 of Wands. I don't know if you can see it from where you are, but the 10 of Wands is a figure and it's holding 10 wands and it's trying to go down the street and it's carrying it and it can't see where it's going, right? And then you've just asked me about grief. So when I look at the card and I relate it to what I've just been asked, at some point, we're going to have to learn how to put the grief down and start living again. So something happens, and I can speak to my experience, for instance, trigger warning, pregnancy loss. I can speak to my experience when I had a miscarriage in 2018. I didn't know how I was meant to put down the grief because I really felt like, oh, the world has done me bad. I did everything I was meant to do. I'm a good person. I've done. So why is that happening to me? And then I had to recalibrate my thoughts. What, you think that good thing, I have to start thinking about these things. And grief, some of us try to, it could be childhood wounding. It could be a number of things. We try to hold on to the thing because it becomes part of our identity. It gives us a reason for behaving the way that we behave in the world. And so to let the grief go, we get scared of it because who am I outside of this pain? And sometimes we don't know who we are outside of the pain. But then the next card that we get is the Queen of Pentacles. And she's holding a coin and she's sitting on a throne. And this again speaks to fertility. So I think that might be somebody's experience here. But she's holding that. And because it shows us that there's always the same way that she's holding that pentacle, the coin, and it looks like a light. It's what we were speaking to earlier about joy is always waiting for you to choose it. Even in the midst of grief, even when things feel really, really tough, joy is always looking for you to choose it in one way or another. That doesn't mean that the thing stops hurting. It doesn't mean that you forget what happened, but it does mean that you allow yourself, you have enough compassion for yourself to allow rest because grief is tiring. So you need to rest even from grieving. And then we've got the Lover's card in reverse. This is a major arcana card, so it speaks to a life energy. The Lover's card in reverse reminds us that we don't ever lose anything. Energy can't be destroyed, right? I'm not a physicist, but I understand that energy can't be destroyed. It can only be transferred. So when we grieve things, it's because we think that thing is gone. It's gone. But how about if that thing has just transferred to something else? It's shifted form. It's shifted matter, but it itself is not gone. So when we are grieving, who's watched what? I was going to say Wakanda Forever. One Division. Remember that scene when it says that grief is just, what is it? Love. Yeah, love persevering. And that's it. Like when we think about it really, the reason that we're grieving is because we really loved that thing or that person or that situation. Hold on to the love and let yourself rest from the grief. And that's the tarot reading.
Kelechi, thank you so much. I should be wrapping up now, but we did begin late. So I am going to allow 2 questions. They have to be questions and not comments. Otherwise, today I have the power. I'll just shut you down. So 2 questions. So it can, I'm feeling really great being here, but you can also ask your questions. So I can see Erica here.
And then 1 question over there.
Okay.
It sounded as though you gave birth to Polly in publishing earlier. I want to ask about Sally in HR. She's one of my favourite ever characters. And I don't know how we've managed to make it through a whole podcast session without even a mention of her. When will we hear from her again, please? We're begging.
Sally.
We love Sally.
Sally. Just a quick one. Just a quick one. Sally's gonna have to return. I want Sally to return as an animation, but I think it's what we were saying earlier about like, are people going to share their power for me to make Sally into what Sally needs to be made into, or am I going to have to take the power and just make Sally on my ones and just get an animator to do what needs to be done? But Sally is a babe, and she's my favorite, most problematic babe, and I do want her to return. There were talks with a production company about making her sort of like The Office. Right? But the issue with that, think about it, is just what we said about power structures. Who's going to play Sally? Right.
I can think of a lot of people that can play
And so the thing is, so I'm essentially helping another person who's not Black to earn money about things that are happening to Black people. So Sally cannot be a real person. It has to be an animation so somebody else can voice her. So that's the thing sometimes. It's how can you be responsible with the things that you create? Otherwise, you're just on that. You're just doing the same thing over and over. But Sally soon comes. Sally will return. Sally's mad. She'll return.
So we have debuted The Edge of Here, and you've had it first. Sally is returning. I mean, this is a wonderful platform. Come again. Please come again. And Mabinti.
Thank you. Hi, Kelechi.
Hi.
You spoke a lot about finding joy and love and peace. And I just wondered if you could share with us how you find love, joy and peace, especially when you put out a Twitter. You put something out on Twitter and you have all those people coming for you and everything. How do you find joy, love and peace in those moments?
I run. It's practical because someday they might chase me, God forbid. But also because I view running as a moving prayer. Like I believe that in order to keep all of these things at bay, I have to have a ritual. Running is one of my rituals. I get out, run. While I'm running, I thank my lungs. I thank my heart. I thank my body for allowing me to do this thing. It helps me to practice gratitude. I just try to leave. Like, there are so many unhappy people in the world. I can't come and take paracetamol for their headache. I really can't. So you just got to let people do, what they're doing. But that's how I practice it, by making sure I get my runs in. Also the endorphins, all of that it sends off. It just allows me to expel the energy that I don't want to use to respond to somebody. Because if I respond and I haven't run, the newspapers will see me. So, it's just, for me, that's important. Prayer, I take prayer really seriously. Venerating my ancestors, I take that really seriously. And spending time with my son, spending time with my loved ones. Love watching comedy, love watching Real Housewives of Atlanta. I like my things, I just like my normal, everyday things. I love cooking. I just go back to being grounded, to being rooted in the now, and everything else that's not in my now it's not important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, I am going to finish this session and finish the day by saying that I thank God, I thank our ancestors, and I thank Mother Earth for Kelechi and for all of you. Thank you for rocking with us.
Thank you all so much.
It's the Benz Brunani womanist, baby boys, baby girls, you need to hear this. If you sit down, receive this realness. Make sure your cup's ready for the tea, we are go sip it, yo. Hard times calling for your long throats. You might learn something you never know. Kelechi fine, and she's one of a kind. Don't say you mine, say you mine.